Good evening and welcome to another edition of Jay's Retro Toys and Games. It's season 2 again, and we are here for episode number 39. On tonight's edition, we're looking at a game that's been around for a long, long time, and who would have thought that it descended from India? No one would have thought this game would have ever had any foreign background to it. And we call it Moksha or Moksha Patam, and it was then brought to the UK in the 1890s. The board game for 2 or more players regarded it today as a worldwide classic, and is played on a game board with numbered gridded squares. A number of ladders and snakes are pictured on the board, each connecting to 2 specific board squares. The object of the game is to navigate one's game piece according to die rolls from the start, bottom square, to the finish, top square, helped by climbing ladders but hindered by falling down snakes. The game is a simple race based on sheer luck, and it is popular with young children. This historic version had its roots in morality lessons, on which a player's progression up the board represented a life journey complicated by virtues of ladders and vices or snakes. But then the game is also sold under other names, such as what we call CHUTES and ladders, Bible ups and downs, etc., some with a morality motif. A morality-themed CHUTES and ladders was published by the Milton Bradley Company starting from 1943. And that's what we're going to look at tonight on Jay's Retro Toys and Games. All right, I'm your host, Jason DeCanio. Good evening to those of you who are tuning in to our great channel on YouTube. Hope you had a fantastic weekend. This is Monday, December 12th, 2022, getting real close to Christmas, so I hope your Christmas shopping is going fantastically smooth, but at the same time, you're in the Christmas spirit with a lot of getting ready to prepare for a wonderful holiday season. Right now, we're going to be looking at the game that evolved since 1943, but goes all the way back to the 1890s. CHUTES and ladders. So the equipment that they use for this game, it could vary, but most commonly it's an 8x8, a 10x10, or a 12x12 squares. Boards have snakes and ladders starting and ending on different squares. Both factors affect the duration of play, and each player is represented by a distinct game piece token. A single die is rolled to determine random movement of a player's token in the traditional form of play. 2 dice may be used for a shorter game. Now, snakes and ladders originated as part of a family of Indian dice board games that included Gyan Chopal and Pachisi, or Parcheesi, known in English as Ludo and Parcheesi, and it made its way to England and was sold as snakes and ladders. Then the basic concept was introduced in the United States as CHUTES and ladders. Gyan Shaparhan Shapor, or the Game of Wisdom, that's the version associated with the Jain philosophy, encompassed the concepts like karma and moksha. Now, the game was popular in ancient India by the name Moksha Patam, and it was also associated with traditional Hindu philosophy contrasting karma and kama, or destiny and desire. Now, it emphasized destiny as opposed to games such as Parcheesi, which focused on life as a mixture of skill or free will and luck. The underlying ideals of the game inspired a version introduced in Victorian England in 1892. The game has also been interpreted and used as a tool for teaching the effects of good deeds versus bad. And the board was covered with symbolic images, the top featuring gods, angels, and majestic beings, and while the rest of the board was covered with pictures of animals, flowers, and people. The ladders represented virtues such as generosity, faith, and humility, and while the snakes represented vices such as lust, anger, murder, and theft. The morality lesson of the game was that a person can attain liberation, or the moksha, through doing good, whereas by doing evil, one will be reborn as lower forms of life. And the number of ladders was less than the number of snakes, as a reminder that a path of good is much more difficult to tread than a path of sins. Presumably, reaching the last square, or the number 100, represented the attainment of moksha, or the spiritual liberation. A version popular in the Muslim world is known as Shatranj al-Urafa and exists in various versions in India, Iran, and Turkey. In this version, based on Sufi philosophy, the game represents the dervish's quest to leave behind the trappings of worldly life and achieve union with God. And when the game was brought to England, the Indian virtues and vices were replaced by English ones in hopes of better reflecting Victorian doctrines of morality. Squares of fulfillment, grace, and success were accessible by ladders of thrift, penitence, and industry, and snakes of indulgence, disobedience, and indolence caused one to end up in illness, disgrace, and poverty. And while the Indian version of the game had snakes outnumbering ladders, the English counterpart was more forgiving as it contained equal numbers of each. The association of Britain's snakes and ladders with India and Gyan power began with the returning of colonial families from India during the British Raj. The decor and art of the early English boards of the 20th century reflect this relationship, and by the 1940s, very few pictorial references to Indian culture remained due to the economic demands of the war and the collapse of British rule in India. Although the game's sense of morality has lasted through the game's generations, the physical allusions to religious and philosophical thought in the game, as presented in Indian models, appear to have all but faded. And there has even been evidence of a possible Buddhist version of the game existing in India during the Pala Sena time period. In Andhra Pradesh, this game is popularly called Valkunthalpalli, or Paramapada Sopana Patam, or the ladder to salvation in Tagalog. In Hindi, the game is called Sanap Sadhi and Mokshapat. In Tamil Nadu, the game is called Param Padam and is often played by devotees of Hindu god Vishnu during the Vakunta Ekadashi festival in order to stay awake during the night. In Bengali-speaking regions, West Bengal in India and Bangladesh, it is known as Shop Shiri or Shop Ludo, respectively. And in the origin of the game, the squares of virtue are faith, reliability, generosity, knowledge, and asceticism. The squares of vice or evil are disobedience, vanity, vulgarity, theft, lying, drunkenness, debt, murder, rage, greed, pride, and lust. So each player starts with a token on the starting square, usually the one grid square in the bottom left corner or simply at the edge of the board next to the one. Players take turns rolling a single die to move their token by the number of squares indicated by the die rolled. Tokens follow a fixed route marked on the game board, which usually follows a Boustrophidian or oxplow track from the bottom to the top of the playing area, passing once through every square. If on completion of a move, a player's token lands on the lower numbered end of a ladder, the player moves the token up to the ladder's higher numbered square. And if the player lands on the higher numbered square of a snake or chute, the player moves the token down to the snake's lower numbered square. So if a 6 is rolled, the player, after moving, immediately rolls again after another turn. Otherwise, play passes to the next player in turn. The player who is first to bring their token to the last square of the track is the winner. and there are variations exist where a player must roll the exact number to reach the final square. Depending on the variation, if the die roll is too large, the token either remains in place or goes off the final square and back again. For example, if a player requiring a 3 to win rolls a 5, the token moves forward 3 spaces, then back 2. In certain circumstances, such as a player rolling a 5 when a 1 is required to win, a player can end up further away from the final square after their move than before it. In the book Winning Ways, the authors propose a variant which they call adders and ladders, which, unlike the original game, involves skill. Instead of tokens for each player, there is a store of indistinguishable tokens shared by all players. The illustration has 5 tokens and a 5x5 board. There is no die to roll. Instead, the player chooses any token and moves it to 1 to 4 spaces. Whoever moves the last token to the home space or the last number wins. The most widely known edition of Snakes and Ladders in the United States is called CHUTES and Ladders, released by Milton Bradley in 1943. The playground setting replaced the snakes, which were disliked by children at the time, and is played on a 10x10 board, and players advance their pieces according to a spinner rather than a die. The theme of the board design is playground equipment, showing children climbing ladders and descending chutes. The artwork of the board teaches morality lessons. Squares on the bottom of the ladders show a child doing a good or sensible deed. At the top of the ladder, there is an image of the child enjoying the reward. Squares at the top of the chutes show children engaging in mischievous or foolish behavior. On the bottom of the chute, the image shows the children suffering the consequences. Black children were depicted in the Milton Bradley game for the first time in 1974. There have been many pop culture versions of the game with graphics featuring such children's television characters as Dora the Explorer and Sesame Street, and it has been marketed as the classic up-and-down game for preschoolers. In 1999, Hasbro released CHUTES and Ladders for PCs. In Canada, the game has been traditionally sold as Snakes and Ladders and produced by the Canada Games Company. Several Canada-specific versions have been produced over the years, including a version with toboggan runs instead of snakes. And an early British version of the game depicts the path of a young boy and a girl making their way through a cartoon railroad and train system. During the early 90s in South Africa, CHUTES and Ladders games made from cardboard were distributed on the back of egg boxes as part of a promotion. And even though the concept of major virtues against vices and related Eastern spiritualism is not much emphasized in modern incarnations of the game, the central mechanism of Snakes and Ladders makes it an effective tool for teaching young children about various subjects. In 2 separate Indonesian schools, the implementation of the game as media in English lessons of 5th graders not only improved the students' vocabulary, but also stimulated their interest and excitement about the learning process. Researchers from Carnegie Mellon University found that preschoolers from low-income backgrounds who played an hour of numerical board games like Snakes and Ladders matched the performance of their middle-class counterparts by showing improvements in counting and recognizing number shapes. An echo-inspired version of the game was also used to teach students and teachers about climate change and environmental sustainability. Meyer et al. From 2020 explored on the basis of CHUTES and Ladders with a free and adaptive game project. This refers, on the one hand, to systemic game pedagogy, and the players and the educators develop the game from ground up and set the rules. The second element of the Monza project is mathematization. Over several years, teachers and learners abstract the game experiences into the language of mathematics. So any version of Snakes and Ladders can be represented exactly as an absorbing Markov chain, since from any square the odds of moving to any other square are fixed and independent of any previous game history. The Milton Bradley version of CHUTES and Ladders has 100 squares with 19 chutes and ladders. A player will need an average of 39.2 spins to move from the starting point, which is off the board, to square 100. A 2-player game is expected to end in 47.76 moves with a 50.9 chance of winning for the first player. These calculations are based on a variant where throwing a 6 does not lead to an additional roll, and where the player must roll the exact number to reach square 100, and if they overshoot it, their counter does not move. So, there are, in the pop culture, the phrase back to square one originated in the game of Snakes and Ladders, or at least was influenced by it. The earliest attestation of the phrase refers to the game. Withal, he has the problem of maintaining the interest of the reader, who is always being sent back to square one in a sort of intellectual game of Snakes and Ladders. The game is a central metaphor of Salman Rushdie's Midnight's Children, and the narrator describes the game as follows. All games have morals, and the game of Snakes and Ladders captures, as no other activity can hope to do, the eternal truth that for every ladder you hope to climb, a snake is waiting just around the corner. And for every snake, a ladder will compensate. But it's more than that. No mere carrot and stick affair, because implicit in the game is unchanging two-ness of things. The duality of up against down, good against evil. The solid rationality of ladders balances the oculate sinuosities of the serpent. In the opposition of staircase and cobra, we can see, metamorphically, all conceivable oppositions. Alpha against Omega, father against mother. Snakes and Lattes is a board game cafe chain headquartered in Toronto, Canada, named after Snakes and Ladders. In the Abby Hatcher episode Game Time with Mo and Bo play a Snakes and Ladders video game on a computer tablet in a hotel while playing the walk-around, unknowingly causing trouble in the hotel. And through Abby's instructions, they use their bodies to simulate snakes and ladders to help those they affected. Snakes and Ladders is a 1980 album by Scottish singer-songwriter Jerry Rafferty. A 2001 Egyptian film, El Salem Wel Taban, called after the game, about relationship mishaps of a flirtatious divorced young man falling in love. And then, in SpongeBob SquarePants, the episode Sailor Mouth features a board game called Eels and Escalators, clearly based on Snakes and Ladders. A real-life version was released on November of 2021. And there you have it, folks. Chutes and Ladders, or as they like to call it, Snakes and Ladders. Another great game that has spanned the test of time in a history that has long been overlooked, and now we give to you. Well, that covers 2 games. So next time on our show, we're going to look at some toys. And I don't know. Let's see. I want to see if there was a list of, let's see if I can do a list of girl toys, because we really have, we really took that list of toys, and there was so many. We had we did Hot Wheels and Matchbox, so that was real male side of it. And let's see if we can get down here and find some. All right, so let's look at some dolls. Let's see. Paper dolls. No, that's educational toys, executive toys. Really, they don't have. We looked at Slinky before, so. Let's see. I Love Toys, Toy Companies, doll. Let's see, the doll. Okay, doll. Let's see. We talked about the Barbie doll. We've talked about Matryoshka dolls. They've come a long way. Well, we were also going to look at that Easy Bake Oven, so we'll look at that on Wednesday. because it was actually in the month of November, the toy that was going to be around for quite some time. So we'll look at the Easy Bake Oven. That was a good one. And then on Friday's edition with another toy, let's look at Fisher-Price, because Fisher-Price has a lot of toys that they gear towards. They're a big brand company, and they talk a lot about toys for male and female as well. So, with that, we'll be looking at the Little People. Good origin. Little People, there's a play family on it. Pretty good. Little People toys. They're a toy brand for ages 6 to 36 months and ages 3 and up. So that should be fun. That'll be on Friday. So we'll look at Easy Bake Oven on Wednesday. And on this Friday's edition, we'll look at the Little People. I'm Jason Icanio, hoping you've had a great time with us here on this edition of Jay's Retro Toys and Games for Chutes and Ladders. Remember, always subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. And remember, of course, always be honest, be real, and keep it simple, stupid. Kiss. We will see you next time. And I cannot find... Where are you? Oh, don't tell me it's backing down. Okay, yeah, it is. All right. Trying to get this music played up here. We'll see you next time on Wednesday. Have a great night. Bye-bye.
Don't forget to subscribe to the David3000 Network for great more content like this one.